Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 260 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about student loans, and specifically student loan forgiveness, because there has been much talk about student loans this week. President Biden talking about it, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi talking about it, and I just want you guys to know where I stand as far as repaying your student loans or waiting for loan forgiveness or whatever, and how likely it may be that you actually get some type of federal student loan forgiveness. So stick around for all of that and more in today's discussion of student loans. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, creating financial goals that are specific to you and your family's financial life, and then pushing on towards the attaining of those goals, and then ultimately towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single person who watches or listens to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, some really interesting information came out of Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, and I think it is worth our noting, especially when we are talking about student loans and student loan debt being such an issue in the United States today, being so paralyzing to so many millennials and so many Gen Zs and even Gen Xers that have taken out student loans and just cannot get out from under that large amount of debt that they have taken out. Okay, so this is a very important conversation, and any information that we get about, is there going to be any forgiveness? Is there not going to be any forgiveness? That's something that I think I should articulate to every one of you. And so we will talk about specifically what was said by Nancy Pelosi on Wednesday. She said that President Biden does not have the power to cancel student debt by himself. Now, this has been a topic of contention in Washington recently because there is such a razor-thin majority for Democrats in Congress. And so if they have a very thin majority, then they have a harder time getting certain things passed. And one of those things would be student loan debt forgiveness, okay? And so the fact that they don't want to have to go the route of having Congress pass this, they want to see if President Biden has the authority to forgive loans on his own. And Nancy Pelosi says he doesn't, right? So she suggested Wednesday that people who believe that President Joe Biden can forgive student debt on his own are misinformed. The president can't do it, she said at a press briefing. That's not even a discussion. Pelosi said any student debt forgiveness would have to be carried out by Congress. Other people in her party have said otherwise, though. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, Ayanna Pressley, they have repeatedly called on Biden to forgive $50,000 in federal student loan debt for all borrowers through executive action. And Pelosi's saying, well, this just can't happen. Right? Chuck Schumer said, all you need is the flick of a pen. All you need is just to sign it into law and it will occur. Biden has asked the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Education to review his legal authority to forgive student debt. Decisions from those agencies are not yet public. That said, higher education expert Mark Kantrowitz says that they are likely to reach the same conclusion of the one reached by Speaker Pelosi, but the White House did not respond to a request for comment from CNBC, who wrote this article. So this is very interesting, and really it means that nothing changes for us. Nothing changes when it comes to our student loan debt. You're not getting any forgiveness. I say our student loan debt. I no longer have student loan debt, but I'm saying if any of you have student loan debt, which many, many people do, so I can make the assumption that somebody who watches or listens to this does have some student loan debt, it's not being forgiven, at least not anytime soon, by just the president. If it were to be forgiven, it would have to be forgiven via Congress, and they would need to do it through budget reconciliation, which again would be a process that is not guaranteed to work and is not guaranteed to be legal in their ability to do it. Okay, so this really leaves us with very few choices. It leaves us with very few options as far as our student loans go. Every time that they come out and say that student loans, they can't be forgiven by the president, and they need to pass it in Congress, but Congress won't pass it. Isn't it really peculiar that we've known for a long time that this is a problem, this is an issue, and yet there's nothing being done about it. There's nothing being done in Washington about this student loan epidemic. So what does that mean? That means that, yes, obviously you can look, towards other places to do these different student loan repayment plans, and I'm going to talk about those here in just a moment. But ultimately what it means is that it comes down to you. It comes down to you to get out from under the student loans that you have. And you may think to yourself, that's a daunting task, or that's impossible. There's no way I can do it. You can do it. Okay, and we'll talk about how as today's episode goes on. But let's talk first about some of these student loan forgiveness plans. Okay, so the most popular of which is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF, is what you'll see it called in many articles and in many places. Okay. And what this program does is it forgives the remaining balance on your direct loans after you have made 120 qualifying monthly payments, so that's 10 years of monthly payments, under a qualifying repayment plan while working full-time for a qualifying employer. So there's a lot of qualifyings there. And the fact that there is a lot of qualifyings there, and there's a lot of specifics and a lot of detail as to what has to be done, it's really interesting that of the individuals who have signed up for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, 98% have been denied repayment or forgiveness. Okay, only 2% of the individuals who have actually signed up for it have gotten the forgiveness. So that doesn't sound like it's a reliable thing for us to try to go after. It doesn't seem that it's reliable for us to think, oh, well, let's just do this public service loan forgiveness. Not to mention, who wants to pay on their student loans for 10 whole years and then get them forgiven? Right? And you may be thinking to yourself, well, if they don't forgive them, I'll just pay on them for 10 years and I'll still owe money. That does not have to be the case either. Okay, that does not have to be the case. You just have to get extremely intentional, extremely fired up about the fact that you have debt and you have to get out of debt. And this is all contingent on me talking about it being on you, and it's your responsibility to pay off your student loans. This is all dependent on the fact that you are actually following a plan. It's dependent on a fact that you are actually trying to get out of debt. You're trying to turn yourself around financially. And if you actually can do so, right? If you actually can take the first steps of beginning a plan, of starting, of trying, of creating an outline of what your plan is, what your idea is, what your goals are for your financial future, then you have a much better chance of getting these things paid off. But if you're just going about it all willy-nilly and you're just like, well, maybe I'll just put a little extra on them here or there, and you don't really have a plan, then the likelihood of you getting it done in any reasonable amount of time is very, very low. So I'm going to talk to you here shortly about exactly how you can get your student loans paid off in a quicker amount of time, and what is the most efficient way to get you out of debt and get you moving on in your financial life. Because we all know that student loans specifically have been something that are holding millennials back. They're holding back young people from moving out of their parents' house. They're holding back young people from buying a house for themselves, of starting a family for themselves. They're holding them back from doing a lot of things like changing jobs or starting their own business or all these different things. And as long as student loans are in the way, that will persist. And all of those things are bad for the economy. It's bad for everybody as a whole if a large portion of our population, a large portion of individuals who may actually be educated, if a large portion of those individuals are saddled with student loan debt and they can't actually do anything to get out of it. So I want to give you some hope to get out of it, and I don't want it to be a student loan forgiveness plan, because this public service loan forgiveness is one of the most popular, right? It's one of the ones that people will cite the most often as a way to get out of student loan debt. And yet it's also one of the shortest at 10 years. Some of the other plans will have you paying for 20, 25 years on your loans before you ever get them completely forgiven. And that's just crazy. And that's crazy when you can go ahead and get your loans paid off in a relatively short amount of time. So just to speak to how big of an issue student loan debt is, 62% of the class of 2019 graduated with student loan debt, according to the most recent data available from the Institute for College Access and Success. This is a nonprofit organization that works to improve higher education access and affordability. Among these graduates, the average student loan debt was $28,950 for a bachelor's degree. Okay, the average U.S. household with student debt owes $57,520. So that's among the households that actually have student debt. Okay, so that's a more indicative average. The average may actually be lower if you include the households that do not have student loan debt, but nonetheless. Okay, so here's what the average student loan debt looks like by type. So for the bachelor's degree, the average student debt was $28,950, and that is just for the new borrowers. That's just for the 2019 graduating class. Okay, this is not for all of the individuals who owe student loans as a total. Okay, then graduate school loan debt, $71,000. Parent plus loan debt, which if you don't know what this is where the parents co-sign on the student loans, which is just not a good idea at all. The average debt is $16,452. Law school debt, $145,500. MBA student debt, so Masters of Business Administration student debt, $66,300, which, speaking from somebody who has an MBA, that is an absolute crazy amount of debt to be taking out to get an MBA. Medical school debt, $201,490. Dental school debt, $292,169. And you get the idea. You get the gist of how big of an issue this is. Now, let us be clear that if you're somebody who just has a bachelor's degree, or you just took out loans to get a bachelor's degree, whether or not you actually got the degree itself, which this is a big issue because the college completion rate for first-time students after 4 years is 41%. After 6 years, it's 59%. And after 8 years, it's only 60.4%. So only 60% of students who begin college for the first time finish within 8 years, which is just absolutely crazy. And a lot of these students are taking out student loans, and so they are not actually getting the degree that they set out to get, and yet they are still stuck with these student loans. So, but nonetheless, these amounts for a bachelor's degree are relatively doable as far as paying them off. Now, they may not seem like that given a starting salary for whatever job you got, right? But one of the big issues is not just the job you get, but the degree that you get and the job that you want. Because a lot of individuals are going into debt to get degrees that aren't going to be beneficial to them in the workplace, right? They're not going to make sense that you actually took out student loans to get this degree in something that does not make any money. Okay, I'm not saying that it's ever good to take out student loans because I don't believe that it's ever good to take out student loans. But I'll tell you this, if you take out student loans, you better be sure, you better be 100% sure that the jobs that you can get on the other side of getting that degree are going to be beneficial to paying off those student loans. Okay, if you take out $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in student loans to get a degree in something in the arts that's only going to pay you $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 when you get out of school. If your debt is more than your annual income is, that is a problem, and that's going to seem insurmountable to young student loan debt holders. Okay, so we have to be very thoughtful about the career choices that we have, the fields that we decide to get into. Okay, but maybe you're out of school, you've already got the debt, you've already got the degree, you already got the job, all these things. How do you go about getting out of this debt? This debt seems to be just wrapped around your neck, and it's ever growing because if you know anything about student loan debt, it accrues interest on a daily basis. So even though there's some stated APR, annual percentage rate, that is on each one of your individual student loans, right? That rate is not the amount of interest that you pay over the course of the year if you're just making your minimum payments. That is not true. Okay, the amount of interest that you pay will actually be a higher amount because they take, let's say it's a 4% rate, they take that 4% rate, divide it out to a daily basis, and you are accruing a small amount of interest every single day. So if you just looked at your student loans maybe once a week, you would notice that they are increasing. Now, ever so slightly over the short term, but over a long period of time, that interest accrues and accrues and accrues and can really, really hold you back. Okay, so what do we do about this? Okay, if the president can't do it, which is what Nancy Pelosi says, and Congress is not likely to get it done, which is historically proven that Congress is not likely to get it done. They got a lot more things on their plate that they want to get through other than student loan forgiveness right now. Okay, then what do we do? Because if you're sitting around with student loans right now, maybe you've had them deferred for some time. Maybe during the pandemic you aren't making payments and they're not accruing interest, which this would have been the perfect time to make payments because they weren't accruing interest, right? Whenever something's not accruing interest, making the payments on it during that time allows you to make more headway when it comes to getting those things actually paid off. But if this isn't something that's actually on your radar, it's not something that you think is possible, something that you think you can actually do, then you need a shift in the paradigm by which you look at your money, by which you look at your student loans, look at the debt that you have. I say it all the time, debt is a strain on your cash flow. And the larger the debt is, the larger the strain on your cash flow it is going to be. Okay. Now, some may say that, well, student loan payments, they're not huge. Even if you have a reasonable amount of student loan debt, then student loan payments don't have to be, such a large part of your monthly income. So why can't you just make those payments? Well, the problem is that student loans are not amortized either, right? Meaning this loan that you get or these loans that you get do not have a fixed payoff date. Okay, they are just, set out there for you with some interest rate and some arbitrary minimum payment that they choose for you to make. And you can be making payments on these student loans for 20, 30 years, which some people actually are doing this. Okay, and this is crazy. It's crazy to keep student loans around that long. We don't want to be saddled with debt into oblivion. We want to get rid of whatever we can get rid of. So given the fact that it's not amortized, you're going to be spending way more over the long term when it comes to interest payments on these student loans because you don't want to make any headway. You're just going to make those minimum payments. That does not work. Making minimum payments on student loans just does not work. Now, the only way that does work is if you choose a repayment plan that's like, okay, a 10-year fixed repayment plan that a lot of the student loan services offer. Then you will get it paid off in 10 years because they'll make the payment as such where it's an amortized loan over a 10-year period. But 10 years is still way too long for you to have student loans. We don't want you to have student loans for 10 years or 15 years. I don't want you to have student loans 5 years from now. Okay. I want you to get your student loans paid off in the next 2 to 3 years. How do we do this? It's not easy. Okay. For most people, this is one of their largest debts. This is not easy, and it is going to require sacrifice. And I know a lot of people don't like that word. They don't like the word of sacrifice. They don't like the words of living like no one else, like Dave Ramsey says, right? Taking the time to actually not buy as much stuff, right? Not get all the things that you want all the time, and taking some time and only focusing on your needs and paying off your debt, and your needs and paying off your debt. And that's all you should be focusing on. Okay. So what do I teach you within the financial action plan, and how does this work when it comes to your student loans? Well, what I teach you just right down the line is the first thing that you need to do, and this is vital, okay? And anybody who says you don't need to do this is crazy, okay? I am out of debt. I've got an emergency fund. I'm investing. I'm doing all these things, but I still do this one thing that is integral to mine and my wife's financial life, and that is a budget, okay? We put together a unique monthly budget. Now, why do we do this? Why do we put together a budget? Because if you don't know where your money is coming from and the amount you're receiving, and you don't know where your money is going and the amount that's going out, then you're going to have a problem, because all you're going to do then is just guess. And let me tell you, a lot of times when you guess wrong. And a lot of times we don't think that we're as bad with our money as we actually are. We don't think we're spending as much in certain areas as we actually are, which this is a problem, right? It's a problem that we can't keep in line our finances just mentally. It's very difficult. So you need to write it out, or you need to put it in an Excel spreadsheet, or you need to download a budgeting app and get a unique monthly budget going and track your expenses throughout the month to make sure that you are keeping up with the budget. And the budget is not there to constrain you. It is there as a way that you are giving yourself permission to spend money in certain places. And you have to think of it in that way. But first you have to budget. Okay, you have to know where your income's coming from. You have to know how much income you have, where your expenses are going, and that'll help you also to see if you can cut back in certain places, or if you need to go out and make more income, work more jobs, work longer hours, whatever you need to do until you can get out of debt and start working towards your career dreams. Okay, so budgeting is vital. That is the first thing you need to do. Then you need to set aside a month's worth of expenses for a small emergency fund, because it is going to rain. Things are going to happen in your financial life. You want a little money setting aside while you're building a financial foundation, just in case something were to happen and you could pay for that in cash. So you would do that. Then if you have an employer-sponsored retirement account, okay, that offers a match, which is free money, then just take up to the match. Don't invest anymore. Don't invest anywhere else. I'm not telling you to invest anything other than getting that match. And so if you can get the match, by all means, go ahead and get the match. Then you go to the fourth part of the financial action plan, which is paying off all consumer debt other than your mortgage. And this is where student loans would fall. This is where, if you have student loans, you are going to pay them off in this particular part. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up all your debts from smallest to largest. And we're not going out and we're not, going out to eat. We're not, buying things that we want. We are bare bones at this point. We are only purchasing the things that we need until we are out of debt. All right. So we're in this place. We line up all our debts and we do it from smallest amount to largest amount. And the reason that you would do that is because you can build some momentum in doing the debt snowball, right? The debt snowball is you line them up smallest to largest, you make minimum payments on all of your debts, and then any extra money that you have, you put it on the smallest one until the smallest one's paid off. And then you take everything that you were putting on the small one and put it on the next one. And then you take everything that you were putting on that one and put it on the next one. So you're building momentum constantly through this process of paying off your debt. And then ultimately, when you get to your largest debts, which student loans will likely be some of the largest debts that most individuals have, once you get there, then you can knock through those a lot easier because you actually have momentum. Now, something else that's going to help you specifically with student loans is not saying, okay, I have $40,000 in student loans. Let's just lump that $40,000 as the last thing on my debt snowball. No, don't do that. Okay, because for most people, if you have $40,000 in student loans, that means that you may have 12 individual loans of $3,000 or $4,000 a piece. Okay, so line those individual loans up from smallest amount to largest amount. And then when you are paying your student loan debt, right, when you are making your payments, then you make your minimum payment, and then you can actually direct any other principal payment that you want to make onto a specific loan. So you would direct it onto the smallest of the loans until that one's paid off, and then continue with the debt snowball through all of your student loans individually. And this is going to make it a lot easier. It's going to make it seem like you can make a lot more headway in a shorter amount of time. It's going to allow you to get some wins. You're going to see some of those zero balances on those loans, and you're going to be excited about it, right? It's going to be nice to actually see that you are winning with your money. You are actually doing something that is beneficial in your financial life. Okay? Then anything that comes after paying off all of your consumer debt, right? That is the why for why we are paying off all our consumer debt. Because if you don't have any debt, then you actually have money, because debt is a strain on your cash flow. Okay? So then once we actually are out of debt, right? We have no student debt, we have no car loans, we have no credit card debt, all these things. Then what can we do? Then we can actually save money. We can actually have money set aside for emergencies with 4 to 6 months of household expenses in an emergency fund, right? Then we can go and we can actually invest money because we have money to invest, and we can put money away for our future and grow it for tomorrow, right? And so we can actually invest 15+% of our income, which is absolutely huge. And you may say 15+% of my income sounds like a lot. Well, think about how much you are paying towards debt. And I bet 15% of your income doesn't seem so crazy when you think of it in that way. And you were just throwing that money away towards things that you're never going to get back. Okay. And then we can pay off our home quicker, or we can actually go get a mortgage, right? If you are a millennial that's been stuck behind student loan debt, now you can actually go out and you have money that you can save up a down payment and go get a mortgage and get a home, right? And then you can pay off that home quickly because you actually have money to do so. And you can be extremely generous, and you can max out all of your investing accounts, and you can give like there's no tomorrow. Okay. And this is what financial freedom looks like. And as long as we have student loans, financial freedom is not going to be easy to come by. Okay. Because given that the average person is going to have $20,000, $30,000 in student loan debt, that is a lot of debt. Okay. That's a lot of money to be paying out every single month to some student loan servicer. It's only going to be profitable to Navient and to Great Lakes and to these different companies. And it's not going to be profitable to you to continue to have these student loans wrapped around your neck. Now, this all comes back to the fact that we should pay off our student loans on our own. Don't sit around and wait for student loan forgiveness, because waiting for student loan forgiveness, it may take years. We know that Congress does not like to work quickly. And if Nancy Pelosi is right and student loan forgiveness can only come via an act of Congress, right? And we've all heard the saying, that would take an act of Congress. Why do people say that would take an act of Congress? Meaning that would be very difficult to do. It would be very difficult to get done. Okay, so it's going to be very difficult for student loans to actually get forgiven. Now, I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying don't bet on it. Why would you bet on something that doesn't seem likely? And why would you bet on something that's going to require you, right, the individual who's actually saddled with the student loans, to continue paying on them and to continue putting your money into this dark pit of student loan debt and not making any financial traction? That is not where we want to be. We want to be making progress. So if it's relatively clear that the president's not going to be able to do it on his own, and then Congress is not likely to get it done in a timely manner, then you need to be doing something in the meantime to get yourself out of this hole. And the quicker you can get out of this hole, the quicker you're going to be able to make some headway over the long term into being financially free, into having a strong financial life, into being financially independent. And that's what I want for you. I want you to be in that place. I want you to have this feeling of accomplishment. I want you to do it on your own. Because let me just tell you, I'm not saying that having your student loans forgiven wouldn't feel great and it wouldn't be an awesome thing, right? Because of course, everybody would feel this relief who has student loans. You would feel this relief of, wow, I don't have to deal with this anymore. But you wouldn't have the personal pride and you wouldn't have that feeling of, okay, I did it. I got out of it. So I can do things in my financial life. I am not a victim. I am a victor. I can go and I can make the most of my financial life. You don't get that feeling when you didn't do anything. Okay, it's going to be far more likely that individuals are going to go back into debt for other things, right? When they get out of student loan debt, they're going to go out and like I said, people are going to take out mortgages. That's the only type of debt that I'm okay with. Okay, but people will go out and take out mortgages and they'll go out and they'll buy new cars, right? And they'll go out and they'll purchase a bunch of things and maybe even end up purchasing things on credit because they don't have money saved otherwise, right? And that is going to be a problem in and of itself. Okay. Anytime you get something for free, anytime you get something that seems like it's for free, because obviously it is coming out of the taxpayer's pocket ultimately, anytime you get something that seems like it's for free, it can come back and bite you in the butt. And that is not what you want. You want that feeling of, okay, I did it. I know how to do this. I know how to work through a financial plan. I know how to be financially successful. And I'm going to continue down that path all the way to being completely debt-free, no mortgage, and having a large nest egg because I've been investing and all these different types of things. Ultimately, what I want for you is not having to pay your student loans off. That's not what I want for you. What I want for you is financial success, financial freedom, financial independence, right? I want you to get out of the hole that ultimately you've dug for yourself. You chose to get into the student loans, but ultimately we all thought that student loans were a good idea, right? I took out student loans as well. I'm out of student loan debt now, and it's so freeing. It's an amazing thing to be out of student loan debt and not have that around your neck. And that's what I want for you. I want you to have that feeling of freedom. I want you to have that feeling that you can actually go out and win financially. And the longer that you sit around and you just wait on Congress to do something and you wait on the president to do something and you're waiting on everyone else and you're not taking any personal responsibility, it's going to be the longer that you actually have to make these payments, and it's going to be way more costly to you. And so we can actually decrease costs by actually taking things into our own hands and doing the most today. So get out of your student loans. Don't sit around and wait for forgiveness, and that'll be the best course of action for you over the long term. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together in building a financial plan that is specific to the goals that you have, and then ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who watches or listens to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in Monday as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.